Okay, welcome to another HeadHunters Northwest podcast, and this is going to be really fun. I don't think there's a person that's going to not want to listen to this. I have Ross Botha as my guest today, and it has taken us a little while to catch up with him because he never sits still in one spot. And thank you, Ross, for joining us. Thank you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
I would like to begin by reflecting on NASGW last year. So I don't know if we've talked about this, Ross, but last year at NASGW, I was heading out the door and I was exhausted. I think it was day 2 or whatever, but I was tired because I had been talking to everybody for a couple days.
Right.
And I get a message or a text message from Ross saying, "Hey, have you left the hall yet? I want to catch up with you." And I thought, okay, I'll talk to one more person. So luckily, Ross found us a place to sit at a table. And I thought, oh, I hope I have enough energy left. But all it takes is talking to Ross and you see him and you get this big smile. Well, we had a great time. We sat down and talked at the end of the day. What fun that was for me. And you probably had no idea I was that tired, or I might have looked that tired, maybe. I don't
know. No, honestly, you look great. I mean, the thing that kind of caught my eye the first time I met you face to face was this image of this lady with this dog
yeah.
and his entire getup, you know, the headgear or the hat and the little pistol
we had
belt
a costume.
It's
because
wonderful.
It was Halloween and it's our only chance to do something fun. And on a whim, I said,
exactly right.
We're going to have a good time. Everybody needs to lighten up before we get to SHOT Show. And so we were handing out candy.
No, you're absolutely right. And, NASGW is it's a good event, but it's a very kind of serious event. Yeah. Everybody's there to talk about pricing for the next year and, meet all the vendors and the suppliers and so forth and so forth. And I think we sometimes get caught up in that sort of, rigidity, right?
Yeah.
That was the first year that I was with a company that had just joined NASGW.
Oh, I don't know that I knew that. Okay.
Right. And so Kenyon, Gleason and myself had been working, for probably more than a year to get, to get all the paperwork ready and all the submissions and everything that goes hand in hand with becoming a member of NASGW. So it was quite a good event for me because a lot of successes happened there. We had become a member and so forth, and we had met some really good potential customers and so forth and so forth. So everything was good. And then I met you for a completely different reason.
Yeah. We'd connected on LinkedIn and we had talked on the phone, but we'd never met in person, which is one of the great things about NASGW is you can actually sit down, have a conversation with people in the industry and get to know them, even if it's for 15, 20 minutes. But it was great because we were at the end of the day, our business was pretty much done and we could sit down at one of those round tables and just visit.
Exactly. And what was interesting for me is that the first time I met you, we were looking for some staff because we had just come out of the craziness of COVID at that point.
Yeah.
And everybody in the industry was making a lot of money, but also a lot of folks didn't want to work. They had been sitting at home for however many months or years actually, and it was tough. We were trying to find anybody from sort of broom pushers in the warehouse all the way through C-suite folks, and it was a interesting couple of years that we've had. So I'm super glad we met though.
Yeah, me too. It's been really fun. And I think that I would love to be able to walk through your background tell us, people who've never met you, they hear this great accent and they're like, where's that guy from? But I would love for you to walk through where you grew up.
First of all, on the accent, we're always the bad guys in the movies. So, we're always the diamond smugglers and terrorists and all this kind of thing. So, um, yeah, dial back. So I was born in South Africa. I grew up there in a later times in a beautiful little town on the south coast called Duivenrivier, which was 5 minutes. Our property was 5 minutes away from the most awesome beaches in the world.
Neat.
So I had the fortune, I guess, to be able to have my children be born over there. I met my wife in South Africa, and they grew up there to the degree of how much you can grow up by about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful experience. And when every time I go back, it's always sort of a heart, wow, you're back in Africa,
Yeah.
There is something very alluring about that continent.
Yeah.
With combined with all the problems and issues that they have, there's something to be said for what we sometimes consider the third world.
Yeah.
I think people over there appreciate the little things a lot more than we tend to do over here. We flick a switch and there's a light, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's not that easy always in the rest of the world. So anyway, fortunate enough to have been born there, grew up there, spent many years, obviously doing my whole schooling thing, and joined the military. I was in the Marines in South Africa, and after that, the Marines got disbanded in South Africa by the later government in I want to say about 1990. I ended up transferring to the Army, became an infantry officer, and spent 19 years in total in the military, or at least attached to the military in one form or another. Parallel to that, my wife and I owned a tiny little retail shop. We were selling, anything from camouflage to Adidas, shoes. So it was kind of a bit of a bit of a punky kind of combined with sort of an outdoorsy shop.
That's pretty neat. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so we cut our teeth pretty early on making sure people are happy, because if your customer is not happy, you're dead in the water, right?
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time and energy to get the brand of the shop out. We did the whole thing with T-shirts and stickers and freebies and all that type of thing. And it was a good experience. We did that for 10 years. It started off, like I said, as the tiny little shop. In fact, my oldest son grew up on my wife's hip behind the counter dealing with customers.
Wow.
He used to teethe on some of the display boxes. So we would, if we sold something, we'd have to look. Oh, good. This thing doesn't come with a box. I'm sorry, because it was all tuned up.
Yeah.
So anyway, we started off with a small little shop. When we finally separated from our partner and decided to move to the US, we were quite a big business. We had several employees. We were a big distributor for other products that we brought in from places like the United States, Europe, etc. And we had a very big training academy. And,
really?
So that's how I managed to get into the United States legally rather than walking across, the southern border.
Yes, there is that subject too. I hadn't even thought about that.
Right. So, so part of that whole process was I had to be published internationally, which was, okay, I mean, how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
It was quite tough jumping through all these hoops to try and qualify, to be able to legally come here. Um, and the fact that we had owned a training company that had the contract to train folks like the South African police, all the metropolitan police departments over there, and a bunch of civilians in small arms, allowed us to, author training material. And eventually, by a stroke of probably luck and effort, like 50-50.
Yeah.
That led to the adoption of that training material by a division in the London Metro Police and a division of the New South Wales Police in Australia. And when that happened, they ended up publishing that, the training material. And that kind of ticked that box.
Wow.
So I was published internationally. It sounds a lot more impressive than it really is.
Yeah. But that still, it led to something else, and it was not giving up.
Yeah, exactly. And, I have a very, very, very good friend that I've had for many years here in the United States by the name of John Farnham. He's quite a well-known trainer. He's a man, probably, he's much older than I am, but wonderful, wonderful gentleman with just a great philosophical thinking behind firearms teaching. And John was originally the one that I brought to South Africa to come and teach over there. But he was the guy that sort of laid the little idea in my mind that maybe I should move, maybe I should come to the States. And I've got a lot of respect and gratefulness for him for doing that, because the last 15 or so years in America has been phenomenal. Well, when we finally moved here, and I think it was 2007, both my children were quite young still, and we ended up moving to your state. We moved to Sturgis, South Dakota,
which is so funny because your phone number is South Dakota area code, which
Absolutely.
blows my mind every time you call me. I think, who is this? And well, of course I put it in my phone. Now I know it's you calling, but it shocked the daylights out of me the first time.
Well, the funny thing is I kept that number from day one, because when you're speaking to people, they learn your number, right?
Yeah.
So I never thought about changing that. I've always been kind of proud of the first town I lived in, Sturgis, South Dakota.
It's definitely someplace people recognize.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that was a culture shock. If you ever,
that would be a huge culture shock.
We walked into this town and a boy, we got there in October. We moved to the US in October. I had never, ever driven in snow before then. Well, not to the extent that they do in South Dakota.
Yeah.
We went out and bought a truck and bought a Jeep and for my wife. And, I was off doing work for the company that had hired me, all across the country. So my wife was like, wow, here we go, deep end, you got to get the kids to school. You gotta do all these things. You gotta drive.
Life doesn't stop when it snows here.
Oh, and you got little things like driving on the wrong side of the road, and it was a steep learning curve. It really was. But the people of South Dakota was astounding. We lived there for 3 years, and it was wonderful. I mean, people were just so friendly and accepting, even though they all said, well, you ain't from around here, are you? With the accent and everything else. So yeah, it was quite the learning curve. But South Dakota was, I always want to say, I think every person that moves to the United States should move to the United States. And by that, I mean, the two coasts, that's not America. America is this sort of middle bit, right? Where you meet people that, eat meat and potatoes and will help you if you're stuck next to the road. So,
right.
And maybe that's a huge generalization, but
Well, when we started talking, you said something that I thought was interesting when we were off camera about really it's 50 countries.
Oh, absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, so within my first 5 years, 4 or 5 years in the US, I managed to travel to every state at least once, but most of them multiple times. So I got to know the United States pretty well. You know, some little places that were just, my goodness, where on planet Earth am I?
Yeah.
You know, the first time I got to, I think it was Louisiana, and people started speaking to me in like French or something. I was, what? You
Yeah.
know, so, but it is 50 countries. And I think that's part of the allure of it, right?
Yeah.
That it's not just this one big blob where everything is just the same.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that is the same, no matter where I've been in the US, at least the people I hang around with, um, if you go to a soccer game, if you go to a baseball game, if you go to an event, if you go to a rodeo, the minute they play the anthem and someone is singing it and belting it out there, I want to say 99.9% of the time, every single person in that audience is standing up with their hand on their heart.
Yep.
And I think, you know, we're kind of entering off the conversation here, but I think if we can get back to realizing what makes us who we are,
Yeah.
rather than all these things that makes us different,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the issues will just kind of go away.
Yeah. How do you think that a lot of your experience that you have more experience traveling across the United States, plus bringing your background from outside of the United States than a lot of people really who live here? They don't often travel to see it. How do you think that comes into play with your really, now I know you don't like to talk about you, but your success, really successful career in the industry, which I would say covers defense, it covers small arms, it covers a lot of areas.
Well, I think what helps is adaptability.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one.
I think, you know, the worst thing for me is stagnation. Um, you know, the minute you stop improvising and the minute you stop making things better and doing things a better way, um, well, then you're just stagnant.
Yeah.
You know, you can't even fish in a stagnant pool, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
you need fresh ideas and you need that interaction. Um, I think the fact that you know I've had to you know often engage with folks that are um, really very different to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it would be so offensive to impose my view on that person that you have to figure out a way to 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 just smile and engage, right? I
Yeah.
think that is at least half of what is needed to be successful. um you know, like you've said, I've had a huge amount of experience dealing with, you know, folks from government level,
Mm-hmm.
from the politics sort of height, all the way down to a guy standing on a shooting range wanting a better way to do something.
Yeah.
Um, I think if you can't communicate with people on different levels of society, and
Yeah.
when you think you're better or worse than the next person, I think that's where things fall flat.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'm by no means a saint. I think we all make gigantic mistakes in our lives. And we tend to make the same things over and over again. And, you know, human beings don't actually learn as fast as we like to think we learn. But I think one thing that my father and my upbringing has always taught me is when you join a company, when you walk into a place, when you meet people for the first time, make sure that the way you treat the lady that makes the tea, or that cleans, or the guy that washes the floors,
Yeah.
treat that person exactly the same and with the same amount of respect as you would the CEO.
Yeah.
Um, you can differ with people,
Yeah.
but the minute you say to yourself, I'm better than someone,
Yeah.
I think you're dead in the water. So
Oh,
to come
yeah.
back to my sort of skill set, I guess, I think it's because I've done the horrible jobs. you know, um, I've been screamed at by bosses.
Yeah.
I've been mistreated by people. I remember working for a guy that threw a telephone at me.
No.
And yeah, like remember the old mobile ones with
Oh,
a
yeah.
big wheel that kind of sat on the
Yeah.
desk? Well,
Yeah.
he chucked this thing at me, and I dodged, right?
Yeah.
I ducked it, right? But but I think when we accept that we're all a little crazy every now and again, then it's fine. I think everybody that's ever worked for me um, knows that I'm pretty demanding with
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah, but I like that. I mean, I know we can't repeat all the stories, and I'm not
No,
going
that's
to.
that's true.
We're not. But here's the thing that I even came home and told my husband after I met you. What I really appreciate about that is when you're hard with your staff, when you say that, to me it means you're setting the bar higher.
Right.
You want to provide exemplary customer service.
Absolutely.
You're asking your staff, at least when I've met them, to serve the person in front of you as if they're coming into your home.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
your goal is to provide your customer, whoever your customer is in front of you, internal or external customer, what can I do to help serve you? That's
Right.
what I think you've communicated to me.
I think what's really important is that on all levels of employee, again, whether you're the lowest of low and whether you're a C-suite, um, I think one needs to realize that the customer is is always right,
Yeah.
absolutely always, at the very least until he walks out the door, right?
Yeah.
Then you can say, oh my goodness, that guy was difficult or whatever, right? But I think second to that, I think a leader needs to protect his staff, not from his or her wrath,
Mm-hmm.
because they work for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to push them to the best of that they are capable of.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, if they are ever in a situation where they're abused by a customer, which happens quite often,
Sure.
as a leader, you should step in and actually then speak up against the customer and say to the customer, you know what, there are certain things I do not appreciate. I remember running a telesales team during COVID, and they did phenomenally well. The firearms industry was. I have certainly in my 400 years on this planet have never ever seen anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just astounding, the volumes, and we would often get customers calling in and just be crazily abusive on the phone to the staff. And I didn't always, but very often I'd be sitting on the call, listening in. And on more than one occasion, I would chime in and say, hold on a second, I'm going to jump in on this call. And I would absolutely say to the customer, look, you're talking to a human, not just a voice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't appreciate you swearing at my staff. I don't appreciate you abusing them or anything like that. And I think sometimes that is forgotten. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, we're all people, and we all just want to be managed, right?
Yeah.
In one way
Yeah.
or another, and we want to have communications and lines of communication open, both up and down.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's magic. I think it's probably just, hard work. You just
Well,
got to
and
kind
it's
of do
what
it.
it's providing excellent customer service all the way in the circle. It's not,
Of course.
even if you get frustrated and even if you need different results, and I think you're very results oriented. You've been very successful at the jobs that you've worked at and the companies you've represented. And I think part of that comes from being self-employed. You know what
Yeah,
it
I think
takes
so.
and you treat it like your money. You treat it like your results. We have to reach this number because this is not just somebody's number out of their head.
Exactly. I think sometimes we forget that the all important thing in in any organization is how much money are you making, how much money are you saving, and do those two match? I think sometimes organizations will save too much money
Mm-hmm.
to the point where efficiency is affected, and others will try and outspend, hoping that they're gonna make money somehow.
Yeah.
Um, I've never enjoyed working for an environment where discounts is the focus.
Yeah.
Um, there's always someone cheaper.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is,
Yeah.
right? I think it's far more important to build those relationships with customers. Um, and that goes anywhere from the guy at the 7-Eleven selling a pack of cigarettes to the same guy every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have a relationship with that person, he'll come and buy his smokes from you every single day.
Yeah.
And if you're nice to him and kind to him,
Yeah.
it's not always, sure, there are customers that are always looking for the lowest bidder, the lowest deal.
Yeah.
But I think most people want to deal with successful folk, and they want to interact with successful companies that, a good deal is when everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to create those real relationships. I've worked, with some amazing people in my life. There's a couple of people I probably don't want to remember too much either, but for the most part, I've really met some incredible folks. And I don't want to necessarily name names,
Yeah.
but people that have really left impressions on me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily only related to, business. That could be, how do you just socially interact with other people? And why do people like particular people and why don't they like other people? Everybody is always being watched. And I think in this industry specifically, and I'm sure in all industries, um, yeah, it is what you do during your working hours,
Mm-hmm.
but it is also what you do afterwards and how you do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, how do you present your company, and how do you represent the company? How does that play over into even a social event?
Yeah.
Because really, at events like, big international events like IWA in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
or Millipol in France, or DESI in England, or SHOT Show here in the States, half of the business is done over a hamburger at night,
I'm glad you brought that up. Yep.
right?
Yep.
If you treat your job like a 9 to 5, where especially if you're doing business development type of stuff, the world runs for 24 hours a day. The fact
Yeah.
that you live in Pacific Standard Time, or Eastern Standard, or whatever the case may be, the rest of the world is not shut off.
That's right.
So if you get to a managerial level or a
Mm-hmm.
C-suite level, absolutely, and you're doing that type of thing, you have to be available.
Yeah.
It's always been fascinating for me. Even companies, there's a lot of U.S. companies that now work a 4-day week because it's cool. Well, that's great, but there's an entire 3 days now where you are unavailable to your customers.
Yep.
And okay, so it's a cost saving measure to work 4 10s instead of
But your
5 days.
business development people aren't doing that. I don't know a single business development.
Exactly.
For instance, you've been an EVP, you've been a general manager, you've run your own company. You currently do some extra things on the side, running your own projects.
Correct.
And I've never known you not to answer my call. It could be the weekend. Matter of fact, there's a lot of times more business gets done on the weekends for my line of work than
Absolutely.
during the week.
Absolutely. But I do want to stress, I think that many companies forget that just having a voice that
Mm-hmm.
picks up the phone and says, "Hi, you know what? We're actually closed today, but
Yeah.
I'll make sure this gets directed or whatever." That is so important. It is 2023.
Yeah.
If you are not, as a company, able to answer or at least have a response within 12 hours, I don't care whether it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
The world is now our marketplace.
Yeah.
If you shut your phone off at 5 p.m. Pacific time, you're losing business.
Yeah.
You're
And
not
I
you're
do
not a
think you
global
can have a
player anymore.
balance. I do think you can have a balance though, in that,
Absolutely.
when there are times where I'm, tired, or like I was getting ready to leave the trade show floor, but we still sat down and talked.
Sure.
It doesn't mean I can't go take a break in my room, catch up on some emails, take a shower, whatever, take a break, and then go out to dinner.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean I can't take days off, but that doesn't mean as a business owner, I can just have the luxury of working 4 days a week. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I'm really sort of almost referring to large companies.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I agree.
with hundreds of employees. My goodness, have a roster, have someone answer the phone, over a weekend.
Yeah.
Just and just kind of roll through those folks.
Yeah.
I think if you're serious about making an impact in the world,
Yep.
It's a big wide world out there.
Yeah. If you're really a global company, you have to be able to cover that and be willing to still talk to people.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But like you say, you also have to know when to shut off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's okay
but
to
certainly,
say, hey, I've done my limit today. Let me call you back tomorrow.
Right. But certainly things like SHOT Show. I've had dinner twice at SHOT Show. Because,
no kidding.
Oh yeah. So you'll get two customers that are really important.
Yeah.
And you're going to humor them. What are you going to do? Sit there while they eat a steak? So, you just have dinner twice. Maybe that's the reason why, my clothes keep on shrinking.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny. I mean, it's
I think you have made my point to why I really wanted to do this podcast with you. And I know it took me tracking you down and really to selling you on this, but I think that you are just a fine example of what it means to be an exceptional business development person. I don't think it has to have a label of general manager or CEO or EVP. I think you can be human just like you are, because you are all those things.
Right.
And I think business development is about being accessible and being agreeable to find a wide variety of topics to talk about and be fun while still being able to make your goals.
Absolutely. I think the secret is realizing that people have to get along with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're selling shoes, socks, or ox wagons.
Yeah.
That's besides the point.
Yeah.
I think canvassing your group of people that you know and that you interact with, and then making new friends. I think we use the word friend quite loosely, but you really have to just make new friends, as much as you can. And again, it takes more than just that phone call. Hi, can I sell you something?
Yeah.
It involves getting to know your customer and getting to know their loves and dislikes and so forth as well. So it's been a good ride. I'm still learning every day.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what's so interesting about you. You're not you're a humble man and you're a confident man, and these are my opinions.
Well,
But you're
I'll
also
I'll have to send you that what did you agree upon? Thank you very much for those kind words. They may be too kind.
well, I think that starting our conversation off camera talking about when you moved to South Dakota and you bought a pair of Wranglers that stood up on their own and you learned how to ride a horse. I mean, I would like to see that. I think that's pretty entertaining and it says a lot about you because I don't think anyone hears this fantastic accent and hears you talk about the foreign military and thinks Wrangler jeans.
Right. Well, like I told you off camera earlier, we got here in October, and by January in South Dakota, I looked like the Michelin Man. I bought every Carhartt coat and jacket and double fleece pants I could find. I was struggling with a cold, Now, of course, I'm a little bit more used to the cold.
Yes.
But
But
man,
you
oh man,
you live in Las Vegas. You can catch a flight anywhere from there. It makes a lot
absolutely.
more sense than Sturgis, South Dakota. It's a little
That
harder
is
to get
true.
places.
It was tough traveling out of there. Las Vegas. The beauty of Las Vegas is that people have a very misconstrued idea of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Even folks in our industry that come here for SHOT Show, they spend a week on the Strip, and they lose all their money. Contrary to popular belief, nobody actually makes money in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But and then they leave. And when I have people asking me, why do you live in Las Vegas? It's cheap to fly in and out of here. It's reasonably affordable to live here. And you can always convince someone that's never been here to come here.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get foreign visitors, out of town visitors. They want to come see the place. So I think it's a good city for that. And point. Off the Strip, it's like a small town. It's pretty weird, but it's not a big city feel,
And you can get anything you need there. If you can't, you can get it made, you can find it, and it can
absolutely. And you can eat anything you want to eat here as well.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
Great food, though. I do enjoy the food when I go there. It's far better than the quality we can get. I'm sorry, Christy Nome, but we could maybe do a little TV ad on wanting to get some restaurants here.
I think the best restaurant in the entire South Dakota is Minerva's.
Oh, I know where that is. It's in Rapid City.
Yeah, they're like in the middle of nowhere out there.
Yeah.
And excellent steaks.
I've not been there yet, so now it's on my list.
That's right.
That's right. Okay, well, thank you for being on the podcast, Ross. And I do want to mention that if anyone is interested in getting a hold of Ross, we're going to put his LinkedIn profile link in this podcast because there are very few business development people and executives that I know that have the background of Ross Botha. And so if you're interested in talking to him more, you can get a hold of him on LinkedIn. You can always call me, of course, if you want me to remain your agent.
I very much appreciate that, Shailene.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ross. And we look forward to the end of another podcast, and we will see everyone on the next one after this. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.